Hi guys, this is Brittany Weaver and I will be presenting my group's professional development plan for you. The group members are Megan Burris, Valerie Tolles, and myself, Brittany Weaver. Our professional development plan is called Racing into 7th Grade Poetry. This slide is the hook slide, and we chose a race car as our metaphor for the topic that we will be using for this professional development plan. And if we were actually presenting this PD as a PD with teachers in front of us and going through it, we would kind of get them thinking about what this race car could represent in poetry. Kind of ask why would we use a race car to symbolize or signify something in poetry? What different parts of the race car or the car could be a symbol to something you would teach in poetry. And have you ever used a race car to symbolize any kind of learning or reading or specifically poetry, and really get them thinking about what this race car could symbolize, which is something you can use with your students as well, to get them brainstorming ideas before you teach them the symbolic meaning or the metaphor behind the race car. As we all do as teachers in our class, we like to start the PD out with objectives and goals for the professional development session. We would share these with the teachers that we are presenting the PD to, and we would also ask them what goals and hopes they have to get out of the professional development session. The objectives that we chose for the plan are identify poetic devices, understand how to implement close reading to analyze poetry, and then analyze poetry and explain its structure and form, how its structure and form contribute to its meaning. So we would share those objectives. We would let them brainstorm with a partner and share out or write on a post-it note and post up on a big sheet and share out some of their own goals and what they hope to get out of the professional development plan alongside the goals that we have for them and our objectives we have. After introducing the goals and objectives, we would then go to this slide, and it's the Common Core standards and expectations. So we would share the standard we had chosen for the professional development session, and then share out what students would be able to do after being taught this standard. So the completion of this standard, what students should be able to do. The standard we chose is RL 7.5, and that is analyze how a drama or poem form/structure contribute to its meaning. We focused solely on the poem part of this standard, and we would do probably another professional development session that tied into the drama, but to focus and really dig deep into the poem and the form and structure of poems is what this professional development session focuses on. At the completion of the standard, 7th grade students will be able to analyze poetry and explain how its structure and form contribute to its meaning. At this, we may stop and ask again, talk about some of the ideas that the teachers came up with the race car and the parts of the car, and then looking at this picture now that they see that the hood is open and the doors are open and you can see the engine, do they have any new ideas as to what the race car symbolizes or the metaphor it could be, and kind of keep brainstorming along that ideas or along that line to really get them thinking and processing what this race car could mean. Slide just discusses what skills are needed to support the understanding of the standard RL 7.5. Poetry basics, poetic devices, which you will see in this link. You can click the link by Poetic Devices is a cheat sheet kind of for teachers to take back to their classroom and teach the poetic devices. Main idea and theme. So these are some of the things that we're going to go over throughout the professional development session with the teachers and really get them comfortable in teaching these skills that support RL 7.5. This slide introduces our evidence-based practice of close reading. So this is where we would see what teachers are familiar with close reading and kind of what they feel and understand about close reading. And then we would tie in to our car the metaphor of close reading procedures. The arrows are pointing to three different parts of the car, and it gives a visual of in the process of close reading. So the first read is the paint job. You're barely, skimming the surface. The second read, you pop the hood. So you dig in a little deeper, you open it up a little more, see what else you can find and make connections with within the text. And the third read is the mean machine. It's like the deepest. You are really into the core of the poem and digging in deep that way. So this is a visual and it's great. It really grabs students' attention. It ties it into something that they would enjoy, something that would make sense to them. And it helps them visualize the understanding of the process of close reading procedures. So this slide now starts into the different steps of close reading. So this is where we would really dig into what it means to close read. We would discuss the first point, the first read, which is the paint job. It's skimming the surface. So you would look at the title, the speaker, the main idea of each stanza, and the overall mood. So you're looking at the basics of the text and what the poem is saying, who the poem is addressed to, the title and how that ties into what they think the poem is going to be about, and then just kind of the overall mood of the poem and what the writer is really giving out about the poem. And this will lead into our second read and help us dig deeper in that second read. Okay, the second read is popping the hood. So this is where we're digging a little deeper into the text. So we're looking past the mood and the theme and the title, and we're digging into what the author is trying to convey to the readers, what the author's purpose is. This is where a teacher would teach and tie in the poetic devices. On the next slide, you're going to see, I'm going to show you, and it will also be a handout that we would hand out to the teachers in a professional development session, and we would let them look through them, see which ones they're familiar about, and ask questions on ones that they are not familiar with. It's also a Google Doc link, so you can click on it and can be shared that way. But it just, the different poetic devices like metaphor, simile, personification, allusion, line length, poetic inversion, alliteration. Some of these things have been taught before in reading, some have not. So kind of looking at what teachers are familiar with and what they have further questions about. You're looking at kind of which words in the text stick out to you as a reader and why, tying in those poetic devices to that. Is there any repetition in the text? If there is, why is there repetition in the text? That helps us identify what the author is trying to convey to its readers and the message, and digs, it really takes the meaning of the text and digs deeper into that. So the overall meaning and feeling and mood of the text, but it digs into that and looks at the why and what is the purpose of using patterns and rhyme and rhythm. We're going to look at a piece later, and the teachers would analyze it themselves and dig deep into are going to get a chance to use this process. And these are things that we would ask them to look for and share out, and get a feel for what they would be asking their students to do. So this is the a screenshot of the cheat sheet of the poetic devices. And then also to the right and over here is the link to the Google Doc. So it would be handed out in paper form to the teachers to use. We would go through it. And then the link would also be, the PowerPoint would be shared for the teachers so that they can use these pictures and visuals. And the Google Doc would be in that PowerPoint for them to, if they wanted to print for their students or whatever use they wanted to use it for, it would be made available to them. And the third read is the final read in close reading. This is what they consider the mean machine. It looks at the engine. It puts it all together, brings everything, the first read, the second read, everything back together. Some things that you would look for during this read are the theme and tying in those poetic devices to the theme that you initially determined and digging deep into that. What made the author portray that theme? Was it the sounds, the words, how the poem was laid out, the shape of the poem? What works together and how do they work together to create that meaning in the poem? This slide talks about different ways to assess poetry and poetry analysis. Annotations, short answer, open response are all three very effective ways to assess poetry analysis. Some of these sample questions we have here, and we would ask the teachers in the PD to use and think of. They can take these questions and use them with any poem, really. How does the author's use of blank, and so you could go to the cheat sheet that we had created and insert a poetic device, contribute to the meaning of the poem? How would the poem's meaning change if the author chose to write the poem in free verse? What is the reason the author chose to use blank to write the poem? And again, you could insert. So these are basic questions that can be used for any poem and then any poetic device that you're teaching. So these would be a great resource for teachers, and then can also be practiced here when we analyze a poem together. At this point in the PD, we would hand out a poem. We would ask the teachers to work together. First, we would model, so it would be the I do. Then we would hand out the poem. I'm sorry. So first we would model with the I do. Then we would hand out the poem and gradually release the teachers into analyzing the poem on their own. So that would be the we do. So we show, I do, then they do the we do, and then they will work together and do the you do. And this is it's a great way, engagement, to have teachers complete a task that they would be asking their students to complete. A great way to better understand the process, to ask questions about the process, to see what else they could do to enhance the process, or get them thinking about how they could take this and implement it in their classroom. And having them complete the task that they would be asking their students to complete is the perfect way for the most effective teaching of poetry analysis. So it's kind of the engagement piece, our assessment of the teachers, but also shows them how they can assess their students. So it's an assessment in both ways. It assesses our professional development session. Did we teach it effectively? Were we productive? Did they understand? Gives them time, and the teachers time to ask further questions. And then it is also an example they can take back to their classroom and assess with their students when they teach this standard. This slide is it wouldn't be part of our actual professional development, but it's part of our plan and following the rubric. And it just discusses how we have learned throughout the entire master's program the importance of using those research-based strategies in literacy instruction and providing a balanced literacy approach. So throughout the learning and implementing in our own classrooms, we chose this evidence-based practice of close reading because it is a strategy that uses metacognition to analyze the meaning and purpose of an understanding text. In this specific professional development, we focused on poetry, but close reading can be adapted and used in all literacy and informational standards. So it's a very, very effective strategy. And that metaphor that we used with the car does not just have to be used with poetry. It can be used when teaching this strategy across any really subject that you're reading. So it's a great way to kind of tie in close reading to all literacy that can be read. This also is a slide that would not be in our actual professional development session, but is part of the rubric, and we wanted to share some of our thinking and where we got our strategies, for effective PowerPoints. This website, the lifehack.org that was on the rubric, was a very useful website. It gave us ideas for putting together our presentation and PowerPoint and making it more effective and usable for teachers. So writing a script and laying out what I am presenting today was a huge help. Doing one thing at a time. So focusing on the first thing and not jumping ahead to the end of the PowerPoint. Focusing on one thing at a time and making sure the PowerPoint flows and is understandable to the audience that you're presenting it to. I feel like we did a great job. No paragraphs, with the exception of the last slide, because that was kind of putting out our research and our knowledge. We did not use any paragraphs. We used bulleted points, and it makes our presentation more engaging and keeps the audience from just reading off the slides, because it's known that you put something on the slide and they're already done reading it before you can even present it. So if you have a paragraph up, then you've already lost their attention. So not doing any paragraphs, like I said, with the exception of the previous slide, because it was expressing our knowledge and research. Paying attention to the design, keeping it simple, not overbearing, not too bright with plain writing, keeping the contrast of colors perfect. Adding in images for them to see the car metaphor, using that image to make a connection for them. Thinking outside the screen and adding a hook, so like the race car sounds, the car moving across the screen, having them engage in that way and thinking outside the box there. We asked them to think about the race car before even expressing what the race car meant. And for that, you're getting them to think about, well, why would we use a race car? What could that mean? And getting them to think outside the box, outside the screen, ties into having the hook. That was our hook, and asking questions, modulating the tone, and breaking the rules. So they all kind of tie in together and making an effective presentation. And these are the 10 tips we used to help with create this presentation in this professional development session.